pleasure to move this motion, and I'll be splitting my time with my friend from Calgary, Crowfoot. And I'm going to start with a sidebar for a hometown shout-out that stretches right across the country. A big hype for the Toronto Blue Jays, who took down the Yankees last night and lifted the whole country with them. Canada's team is flying to the ALCS, and as a big fan, this team gives me all of the feels. I know that's true for everyone across the country, so congratulations. And unfortunately, you're not going to like the next part. And just like the Jays proved that what teamwork and discipline could do on the field, imagine what Canada could achieve if the government showed the same focus. Because unlike the scoreboard at the Rogers Centre, which you've been seeing go up and up and up, the only numbers that are going up in Ottawa, unfortunately, are deficits, unemployment, and net investment flowing southbound rather than here. And I'm going to tell a story, rather a cautionary tale. Once upon a time, in the not so distant past, the year was 2015, a trust fund millionaire living in liberal la-la land decided to run a radical experiment. He decided to spend billions of dollars of people's money to figure out that whether budgets could truly balance themselves. And never mind that anybody with a background in finance, accounting, or any part of the real world told him that it wasn't possible, Justin Trudeau wasn't going to be deterred. According to the Trudeau School of Economics, proudly located at the University of Unicorns and Fairy Dusts in a land of make-believe, spending ourselves deep into the red, lighting endless amounts of taxpayer money on fire and calling it, quote-unquote, investment in spending, he said that that would somehow make us all richer. Well, 10 years later and hundreds of billions of dollars later, the most expensive and costly experiment in Canadian history has ended, and now everyone with even an iota of common sense could have predicted what would happen. And we didn't get the promised utopia that everybody gets a job and nobody has to work and nobody thinks about monetary policy. Instead, the Liberals doubled the debt to give us higher inflation, higher taxes, and smaller paychecks. And that's true today. Our living standard, as measured by economists, stagnated, and it's getting worse. And rather than creating more prosperity, we lost $500 million in foreign investment. Investment per worker dropped by 10.8%. Our labor productivity sunk. And all while he told anybody who questioned any of this as either talking down Canada, he called them racist, he called them alarmists, saying that the planet would burn down. He called them every name in the books just for calling out the facts. And when Canadians were finally freed of the high-tax, high-spend Justin Trudeau regime earlier this year, they breathed a short sigh of relief. Because the new guy was supposed to be different, and he was supposed to be better. He said he was an economist who knew how markets worked. He said he would cut back on the reckless spending and make it easier to create investment here in Canada. He said that he would do things differently. He said that he would get a trade deal with the United States. And here's where we're at. First of all, he kept the old people from the old government, the finance minister, the trade minister, the jobs minister, the foreign affairs minister, the justice minister, most of the front bench, all the same. So not really a new government. And instead of fighting for Canada and keeping those elbows up, he brought a calculator to a knife fight like his minister said that he would. He's adding up on that calculator $1 trillion gift to Donald Trump, subtracting 86,000 jobs here in Canada and multiplying American tariffs on our goods by 2. And he's not spending less. He's spending more. Justin Trudeau was the most expensive prime minister in Canadian history. His budget was forecasted this year that we would spend $42 billion. The Liberals would spend that. The parliamentary budget officer says that the new prime minister is going to spend 60% more, and that amount is only growing. And somehow the new prime minister has found a way to spend more than the guy who spent more than all of the other prime ministers combined. For those of you watching at home, spending $26 billion more means making the deficit bigger, not smaller. It means less money in your pocket. The Prime Minister is hoping that you don't notice that. They're telling Canadians again, just like they told Canadians in 2015, that money is an investment and it's supposed to create more jobs. But here's how it adds up. We've lost $54 billion of net investment in just half a year going southbound, not coming here. 86,000 jobs are gone, and we have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7 with the second highest unemployment rate. Instead of the strongest economy in the G7, like the Prime Minister stood at every podium during the election and promised. These aren't stats. They're connected to people, to people's lives, to families, to paychecks. And every job loss in a place like Windsor, Oshawa, Ingersoll means another family isn't sure how they're going to put food on the table. A father isn't sure how he's going to tell his kids that dad doesn't have work anymore. Every person who wants to work and can't find a job doesn't have the dignity that comes with being employed. These are the real stories of the effects of these big numbers. And every time somebody who's working 1 or 2 or even 3 jobs goes to the grocery store and can't afford basic necessities, it is the failure of the principle that if you work hard in this country, you should be able to get ahead. That is why we fight. We fight for every single Canadian who's being forgotten and left behind by the big numbers that the Liberals are putting on the board. If you measure your wealth by looking at stock indices or portfolios, this Prime Minister is your guy. But if that comes from a paycheck, you are being sold out in this scheme. And that's why it's so infuriating to see the Prime Minister and the Liberal government doing the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do. And it is especially galling that after the Prime Minister went to Canadians in a time of crisis, offered them his word, offered them hope, and then completely forgot about everything that he said on the campaign trail, or worse, possibly didn't mean any of it at all. The Liberal government has been spending all of that money for 6 months with no plan of accountability or accountability of how they're doing it. The parliamentary budget officer, that's the budget watchdog in this place, says that the government has no fiscal anchors whatsoever. And if you've been listening to the Prime Minister before, then you might have heard a bunch of talk about operational budget versus capital budget. I guarantee you that they will come back 9 times out of 10 when we talk about the out-of-control spending. That's their response to it. But this is not a plan to balance the budget. It's just an absurd proposal to move the goalposts. They're changing their reporting standards that the nonpartisan fiscal watchdog has said will lead to less transparency and doesn't even meet the international standard. So why are we doing it? Well, it's simple. If you really want to know the reason why we're doing it, you can't actually stop the spending and want to brag about balancing a budget without doing that. And if you're trying to do that, you just change the way that you count. That's what we're seeing from them. It's like claiming you ran a marathon, but you quietly moved the finish line 20 meters up. None of this is fiscal responsibility. It's all financial theater. And you're going to see that on November 4th. What they're doing is trying to hide another broken promise of this Prime Minister and this Liberal government full of Liberal ministers who still sit in that front row. They're not going to be able to hide it for much longer because the fiscal watchdog says that we're at the precipice of a cliff. That means the government is spending more money than we can spend. More debt and more interest payments equals higher taxes, higher inflation, fewer jobs for Canadians, and less money spent on the very things that we need them spent on in this country, for services for Canadians. You can't keep doing this over and over again. That's what he said. And so it's time to stop lighting taxpayer money on fire, and it's long past time to to toss out the Justin Trudeau fantasy novel on economics, stop doing the same thing, stop plagiarizing his work, and start living in the real world where real people live paycheck to paycheck, where jobs are lost, where hope is no longer.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing.
Speaker, it's sad that the opposition is continuing to spread the divisive message at a time when pride and grit should really unite all Canadians around the challenges that we're facing. These aren't stats, she said, and she's right. These are slogans. The real stats are the following. We have the strongest credit rating in the world, AAA. We have the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7. Right? We have one of the highest rate of growth in the G7 since 2020. The IMF and the OECD project that Canada will have the strongest economic growth in the G7 this year. These are stats. These are real. The other thing she said is that the PM forgot what he said on the campaign trail. I would like to remind a member that we have increased salary for our armed forces, we have cut taxes for Canadians, we have launched a major project office, we have launched Build Canada Home. The question is, will she support us?
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, you're right that Canadian pride unites us. And you can tell that to the Prime Minister who moved his company out to New York because he realized that it was his own policies that would hurt the investors that invested in that company. You can tell the Prime Minister who doesn't pay his taxes in Canada about national pride. You can tell all you want to the worker in Oshawa that just lost their jobs because the Prime Minister can't get a deal on Ottawa. You can tell him all day long that the debt to GDP ratio is good. But what are you going to tell him when he can't put food on his table? And what are you going to tell him when he gets the pink slip? What are you going to tell the 86,000 workers who have been laid off in this country, the investment that has fled south? What are you going to tell all of those people whose livelihoods are on the line because this government can't control its addiction to spending?
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Drummond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague's speech was very interesting. I think that this Conservative motion today finally brings something that the Blot can agree to. It's easy to say that this government's management is deficient. Things are getting worse. This government has to manage a financial crisis for Canadian and Quebec families, but it's decided to cut $90 billion in potential revenue by not imposing counter tariffs, by getting rid of the DST, amongst other things. But the Conservative austerity proposed is. Well, what are they proposing exactly to stimulate the economy? Because we can't just cut everything. We also need measures to ensure that companies are prosperous and decide to invest in our economy.
Thornhill.
Well, I'm pleased that that my honourable colleague has is finally seeing the light in what the government is putting forward. Look. We have said time and time again that we have to build the Canadian economy with Canadian workers and Canadian investment here, with things like getting rid of the oil and gas cap so that the pipeline that potentially was approved 10 years ago that is back on the table can actually be filled with oil, that we can unleash the capacity of the private sector to invest here by cutting red tape and regulation. He has heard that time and time again, and I'm glad that he's finally standing up to oppose this government's reckless spending.
Questions and comments. Now, member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I enjoyed that speech very much, and I was quite surprised by the line of questioning that came from the Liberals. They would have you think that we've never had it so good, that everything is rosy in Canada, that after 10 years of economic and fiscal vandalism, that Canadians should just congratulate this government for a job well done. They have broken every single promise they have made on deficits, debt, fiscal anchors, fiscal guardrails, whatever you want to call them. Would the member have any further comments on that with the remaining time?
Member for Thornhill in 40 seconds or less.
I will say this. The Prime Minister stood in front of Canadians at a time of crisis, and he asked for their support. he promised them that he was going to be the guy in the crisis to negotiate a deal. And since he's become Prime Minister, I will remind this House over and over again that $54 billion of net investment has fled south. He's promising to make that $1 trillion without the promise of even a dollar coming back into our country. 86,000 jobs are gone. We have the second highest unemployment rate in this country. That is nothing to be proud of, and certainly things have been much, much better in this country.